Hello and welcome to the weekly Yes, a podcast where two best friends talk about their joint mission to say yes to life. I am your host, Jara Skagfjord, and co-host is my bestie, the amazing Kristin Guerin. On today's episode, Kristin and I continue our conversation from last week. We talk about how to fit creativity into a 40-hour work week. We discuss how washing machines change the American culture and how to gamify your life. For today's Fast Facts, I'm gonna remind you that this is part 2 of a 2-part episode. So if you haven't listened to the first part, I highly recommend doing so before you go any further. For the rest of you, I'm gonna drop you straight into our conversation. Enjoy. So my yes last week, remember how I set the intention of focusing on, I was trying to figure this thing out in this one room and it wasn't going anywhere. So I decided to leave that room and explore other rooms in the house that is my life, right? And I realized just how full my life is, actually.
What a beautiful discovery.
It was actually incredible. And I wrote all of these things down that are kind of both just who I am and things that I do and side projects and all these things. And also just what life has to offer, kind of, sort of, came through. I'm like, oh yeah, there is more to life than just work.
Yeah.
Yadine actually said this last night because now we both have full-time jobs, working 40 hours a week, 40 plus sometimes, and we're giving a lot of our time
hold on. That's nuts, Yara.
Yeah,
From
I
where
know.
you guys were to where you are now, that's absolutely nuts. Talking about adulthood. Jeez.
It's crazy. And we're realizing so many things. I'm now certain things that I didn't really understand about just I don't know, the culture. Let's put it that way. It's sort of the culture and how society talks about adulting or whatever. I'm oh, I understand now. Because speaking of time, going back to sort of being worried about time and you're losing, there's not enough time. And there's not when both of you have a full-time job. You know what I mean? You come home at the end of the day, it's 6 o'clock, and I am working from home, but Yadine has been commuting. And then what do? You eat dinner and you fall asleep because you're exhausted. What do you do? And I was just there's so many things that I'm realizing through now both of us having full-time jobs. I'm okay, now I'm starting to understand other adults. Do you know what I mean? Because we were kind of just living the artist life of some weeks we would be working 80 hours a week, depending on what gigs we were doing, because everything happens at once. And sometimes it would be maybe 20 hours, Yeah, just we were both freelancing and had part-time jobs, that kind of life. And now we both have the 40-hour work week life. And it's absolute insanity. It's absolute insanity that we are making people do this.
It's so true.
It's literally, it's and I understand on even a more zoomed out level why they, quote unquote, are making people do this.
Who, the men?
You don't have time to live a fuller life. You don't have time to think.
Yeah.
You don't have time or energy to care. You know what I mean? About other people or the world or to question things or whatever. You know what I'm saying? It's just how are you gonna, take really, really good care of yourself or let's say you have children or your pet or your spouse? How? No wonder people are crumbling, Yeah. No wonder, people's mental health is just, in the gutter, in general. Because I was wow, if I had children on top of everything that's going on in my life right now, Jesus Christ, I don't even know, if both of us were working more stressful jobs than, let's say both of us were doctors or whatever, or cops or, something where you're dealing with really high intensity stuff all day, every day.
Yeah.
I'm I don't even, how, how? I truly just don't understand. I don't understand. And of course, my human design, I am a projector. And according to human design, projectors working full-time or working 9 to 5 is the opposite of what projectors should be doing. Because we don't generate our own energy. we take it in and then project it or like expand on it, right? So projectors need a lot of downtime, like a lot. And not to, people would think like, not just to just like sit and do nothing, even though that is helpful, but to just discover and like, and live your life. All of that is to say that I did have, because I decided last week that I wasn't gonna, because I'm already giving so much time and energy into my muggle job. It was taking up it was taking up the rest of my time because I kept thinking about it. Because it kept, like my job kept lingering and everything else I was doing throughout the day. Like I couldn't, like when when I closed the laptop, I didn't actually leave my office. You know what I'm saying? Like I didn't actually leave the office. The office was with me everywhere I went. And I decided last week that I wasn't going to do that anymore. Like when I leave the office, I leave the office fully. And I was able to do a lot of nothing, meaning just meandering, allowing myself to get bored, doing little things here and there. Yeah, I cleaned the house, took care of Remy. We had been procrastinating, like making this vet appointment for him, like all kinds of things, met some friends, like really put more energy, like because sometimes when I'm like, for example, when I'm like editing the podcast or when I'm doing other side projects, it feels like just another thing I need to check off my list because I need to get things done. You know what I mean? But I was able to actually really enjoy the process of like editing the podcast from last week and everything. I made all of my beauty appointments. And I was able to go back to a side project that I had completely abandoned, which had to do with like, I'm like working on some lyrics for songs and like some translations and stuff. And it's just my own personal passion project. And I was able to finish a whole entire song. Like it took the whole week because like some days I just wrote one line and I couldn't get to the next line because it was so hard for me to do. But because I had sort of made breathing space for me to do nothing, that's when the creativity was able to actually start moving and start flowing. And I couldn't even believe it. Like I literally have not touched this project properly in months. And the moment I decided, you know what, I'm just not gonna, and it's not like I said, I'm not gonna put any energy into my job. That's not what I said. I was just like, I'm just gonna, like when I'm done working, I'm done working. I'm not gonna bring it into the rest of my day. That's all I decided to do. And then the things just emerged, just from making that decision. So it's not just about, I know I was talking about how hard it is to like, you're spending all of this time at work, and like we shouldn't be spending all of our time there, like 40 hours a week. And I think that's true, but also that is also the reality. So how do you make the most of the time when you are outside of work? And am I going to blame my job? Am I going to blame the 9 to 5 for the fact that I don't feel fulfilled or that I don't have a full life or that I don't have time to do anything? Or is it just a matter of this is my work time and then this is my playtime or whatever? Sometimes, like during those times when that's a thing, even if it means, because I kind of like all or nothing thinking, I can't sit for 5 hours and work on this side project. Well, I have half an hour now, so I may, it's not like I was deciding, okay, this week I'm going to work on this side project. That's not what happened. I was just like,
right.
And then it popped up and I was like, oh, maybe this line. And then I wrote one line and then I just put because I'm doing it on a notes app on my phone. And then I put the phone down and then the next day I came back to it. And then the next day I came back to it. And I saw this quote on Twitter. It was like from writers, and someone was talking about like, how writers need time to like, write. And there was like a response from Neil Gaiman, who said that he wrote his book Coraline 50 words a day. That's how that book got done.
That.
The book got done. Very, very popular book that has since been made into a movie. 50 words a day. That's it. And the book got done. So it's just like, just showing up in any capacity, is enough. Like if that's all you can do is 50 words a day, just keep chucking along. Like after a few days, you're gonna have pages and a book, And so and then a bunch of other writers started chiming in, like, oh yeah, I did this 1 page a day. Oh, I did this half a page a day. Oh, I did this. I wrote this book over the course of 5 years. You know what I mean? But it got done. And Julia Cameron writes about this in The Artist's Way, is that artists, they need time to do nothing because that's where the creativity comes from. Like it's sort of like you fill your well through the downtime so that you have some place to write from, right? Or I don't know, like rewiring your brain or like, accessing those channels or something.
Yeah, it reminds me of my Sacred November
Mhm.
thing, where all I did was the only thing I got rid of was Instagram. And I just said, I'm just gonna delete Instagram. I'm not gonna look at Instagram for a month. And I would just sit, I was like, where did all this time come from? Because I was blaming, which listen, I agree with you. I think I'm so thrilled that we're starting to move into a lot of companies around the world now are starting to move into this 4-day work week, because
Mhm.
it's not necessary to be here 5 days. Like, we can get this shit done, and it's actually productivity is increasing all of this. I remember years ago studying second wave feminism, which basically the whole like underneath it, like where this second wave of feminism came from was capitalism in the United States. People wanted to sell more washing machines. And they said, how do we sell more washing machines? You only need one washing machine in a household. And if you got, you know, multiple generations in a household, then it's like 10, 15 people for one washing machine. But if we can split those generations up and separate them, then we can sell more washing machines. So then they started to create this extensive ad campaign that actually like deeply influenced our society in the United States, which isn't true in other countries, right? Just like but very true in the United States, where the goal for every woman was to have her own house with a picket fence with just she and her husband and her 2.5 children. And that was ultimate, the ultimate goal for every woman, with her own washing machine and dryer. And that's what started this, like what you're talking about ultimately. The answer is, how do we do all of this? How can you possibly work 40 hours and also, raise children and keep house and you know what I mean? All these things. It's actually impossible. And
Yeah.
it wasn't meant to be like this. I mean, we're supposed to live in a community. We're supposed to live, and have, I just think of, so I'm in Israel right now, and a lot of the way people raise their children is they raise their children with their parents and with their aunts. Like, I have a friend whose his sister's pregnant right now, and they're talking about like, oh, like, what, the whole family will be there, and we're gonna like, and I was like, no, like, my grandparents came, if they had to, once a month, once every couple months, to like babysit, to give my parents some time off, but it was my parents' responsibility. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And yeah, it was very isolating and very
Yeah.
like, it was just that nuclear family. And I have had to strip that away. And I think right now I'm really starting to build up my relationship and my comfort level with community,
Yeah.
because I was taught like, I mean, even my gosh, I mean, for kids, as kids who grew up in the 90s, in the US in the 90s, it was a lot about like stranger danger. Like, literally we were
Mm.
taught, don't talk to people who you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, just go to school and then go to your house. You take the bus, go to your the school bus, go to your house, stay inside. Okay, we're gonna go to ballet class. We're gonna go to, you know what I mean? But it wasn't like you lived in a community. Anyway, wow, that's a tangent. But yeah, it's literally impossible what you're
Yeah.
describing.
Yeah.
Like, we need the whole family. We need like the extended family to help raise the kids and cook and everything. But it reminds me of Sacred November of, yes, so all of that is true and I agree. But Sacred November, where I was like, oh, where am I leaking time and leaking energy that I don't even see? And for me, it was Instagram. For you, it's like thinking about work, just like staying in that world after like closing the computer and staying in that world. Yeah. And I feel like for listeners, like, where are you leaking energy? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where do you not even see?
Are you gonna say something about farts or something? No.
I know. I need to say it, because it's funny, not because it's like, actually. So I did this ad campaign for natural gas. Like, don't buy natural gas. Don't have natural gas in your house, because it's like, the idea is that like it's leaking and it's just like slowly killing you. But it's a really funny ad campaign, and we just saw the final piece like yesterday. It came out or whatever, what the final cut of the campaign is, and I'm hardly in it.
My friend posted on his Instagram today because his friend is in it. And I'm like, oh my God, my friend is in it. He was like, oh, which one is your friend? It was like a whole thing.
Which one is your friend? Your friend's the one in the blue who's in the background. Never that her animal story.
She's the best one out of all of them, though. It's their loss.
So funny. So funny. I mean, there were like 10 characters and they wound up using like 4 storylines. We knew this was going to happen, but it's just so funny.
But it's actually, isn't that just the dream scenario, though? Like, you just showed up and but you're barely in the ad, but you got all the money.
I got all the money. But I don't think it was about that. I was like, what I actually think it was about was I was supposed to come to Israel for like 2 weeks, to Tel Aviv for 2 weeks, January 1st through January 14th or something. I wound up and then I booked, as soon as I committed to talking about feel like we talked about this before of like making a choice and making a commitment. And I said to him, okay, New York. I said to my friend
to him,
Guy,
I says,
I said to him. So I said to my friend this morning, I think I booked that commercial not to actually do the commercial or get the money. Like the money was helpful and all of that. But I think it was I committed to doing something. And then the universe was like, yes, and let me give you one better. Because if I had just been here for 2 weeks, I would have gone home. I would have not had the experience, a quarter, an eighth of the experience that I've had. I would have actually been in a really shitty program. No offense to the program that I was supposed to do, but it wasn't that great. And it was short. It was 2 weeks and it was really intensive. Like I committed to doing the thing at night. I booked the thing. I like committed to doing it. And then the next morning I heard from my agent, you just booked this thing from this date to this date. And I was like, oh my gosh, I literally just paid the deposit for this other. I was like, okay, well,
wow.
whatever. And so I wound up having to bump my trip. And I was like, well, let me see if there's something that's like this program runs after the dates of the commercial shoot. And I wound up Googling and finding a different program altogether that was much better, a better fit for me, much more relaxed. I would also be able to work in the evenings. I wouldn't have to just like take off 2 weeks. It was 6 weeks long. And then that 6 weeks butted up against my friend not being in her apartment for a month. So me being like, I'm going to extend and live in your apartment so it's like, it was literally, if I had not booked that commercial, like it had nothing to do with the commercial, it had nothing to do with, like the work or anything. And I was trying to control and trying to figure everything out. And now I'm just like, I have no freaking idea. You know what I mean? Just accept and go with the flow, Pisces, and trust that the universe and the creator has your best interest at heart.
Yeah.
But also like you have to make, and that's also like, that's kind of the pushing and that's the resistance of Pisces season is like, you could just go with the flow and just like, I don't know, whatever.
And be super passive and
Yes. Very passive. We're very, very passive. But also like the resistance comes with making the commitment. So like I put down the deposit and then the universe was like, let's push you this direction instead. But if I hadn't put down the deposit, I bet I wouldn't have booked the job.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure I wouldn't have.
It was about a redirection.
So I think it's also
the
like
commercial was a redirection.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. So commit. You have to commit in the first place.
I think about this all the time when I think about A-list celebrities. It's like A-list celebrities that then move on doing other things.
Yeah.
Whether it's, I don't know, owning their own production company or, they become super involved in a very specific cause, So it's like, so the end goal wasn't to become an A-list celebrity. Like being an A-list celebrity is the vehicle that you use to do these other things. Because you have you have power, you have money, you have influence, and you use that to do this other thing,
100%.
So whether they knew or not, maybe they did, maybe that was like a part of their sort of, I don't know, vision or, manifesting or whatever. Or maybe it's something that happened, when you arrived at the place that you thought, I've arrived at that. Wait a minute. What do I do now that I've arrived at this place? This is interesting. Yeah. Also, I was just thinking because we were saying like going with the flow and being passive. Yeah, Dean and I are like very geeky when it comes to like watching movies or TV or whatever because we're both like Dean is a writer and I also have like a writer's brain. So we love sort of like picking apart, script and like seeing like, oh, why did this work? Why didn't it work? Like, why did we like this character and not that character? Like, why, stuff like that. Why did we stop watching at this point? We're kind of like analyzing stuff like that. Those are the conversations we often have about things that we watch because we're learning from it, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things that we often find out when we're watching a movie or a TV show that we're like, why are we not on board with the protagonist? Like, what's going on? Like, why are we not rooting for this person? And a lot of the time, it's because they're passive. It's because everything is happening to them and they are not making any choices. So I think that's just an interesting metaphor. Yeah, it's just an interesting metaphor for life. You know? It's like, like if you are also someone that does things, like takes actions or like you're taking risks or you're making commitments or you're making decisions, maybe the universe is rooting for you just a little bit more.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I love that. Oh my gosh, I love this so much. It's oh my god, I love this. I love this metaphor so much because I'm sorry, I just have so many friends who are like this, who are just kind of stuck in waiting. You know what I mean? And I feel like we've talked about this on the podcast a couple times of make any action and then trust that even if it's the wrong decision, You just make a decision.
Yeah.
And trust that things will
If it's
move.
the wrong decision, it's a comedy. Everybody enjoys a comedy.
Yeah, it's true.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Just go there, just
Yeah.
and see what happens.
And trust that you'll be redirected.
Mhm.
And I think this is one of my Kabbalah teachers, David Guillaume, says this. I'm pretty sure he said this. Whatever decision you make is the correct decision, and the creator will follow or help you in that decision. Like once you've made that choice, the universe will conspire with you and
Mhm.
use that energy to uplift that choice, bring you blessings, bring you all of the things that you would have received if you make the other choice.
Yeah. I think also if one were to think about it as a game, it's like, I wonder if, like Mario Brothers, you're kind of like, oh, I wonder if I can go down this tunnel. And you're just like trying
Yeah.
it out. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But like, oh, I wonder what happens. And then you just kind of, okay, universe, what are you going to do now? Like, oh, I wonder what the
Yeah.
universe does if I do this, if I go there, if I talk to this person, if I respond, if I. So I
I
wonder
love
if you
that.
can kind of just like gamify a little bit, like your life, you
I
know?
am obsessed with that image. Yeah, what happens if I talk to this person? What happens?
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
What is the
I
universe
mean,
going to do now? What will they
yeah.
give me? What will happen?
I mean, it's full circle what Yadin said to you about it's all pretend.
Yeah.
That's
It's
not
all
just the
pretend.
acting work. It's
Yeah. So what's going to be your yes for the upcoming week?
Oh, that's so funny. So my original answer, which I had written down before, is it's not incorrect now. It's just like that and like
Uh-huh.
plus. I'd written start the rest of my life now and live my life on my terms. I was thinking this morning about what my ideal life would look like, which is something I wrote down, I believe actually, and I'm realizing now, I think I did it on my birthday last year. Pretty sure I did this for my birthday last year of like a year from now or 5 years from now, like what's my perfect life look like? And it was 5 years from now. It looks so similar. It's a different city, but it looks really similar to the life I'm living right now, right?
Yeah.
And it was literally like roll out of bed. I'm in a neighborhood I love. I roll out of bed and I go to my yoga class, which is like right down the street. And I'm part of a community. And I go to my local coffee shop and I'm like, hey, Joe. And like, and then I go to my like outdoor space, my rooftop, and I'm drinking my coffee and I'm doing my morning pages and I can host people. Like I live in an apartment where like my apartment is a studio in New York. It's quite like 400 square feet. And most of that is closet and bathroom. So like I really can't host people unless they're like in my bed, which also is too small of a bed. A full-size bed for an adult is too small.
It's too small.
I didn't realize until recently. I don't know if I got
Same.
bigger. I don't know
Same.
what happened.
I slept
was
in a
fine in my
full-size
20s.
bed. I think it was in Iceland. I slept in a full-size bed. I'm like, this is a child's bed. Like, what is happening? Like, I can't. I've got
It
hips and
didn't-
a butt.
I
You
know. Listen, I've had this mattress since I graduated from college. So I've had this mattress since I was 22 years old. I'm now 34. I guess it's time to get rid of the mattress.
I think you need a new mattress.
Might be time. But I swear, until like about 6 months ago, it was the size was fine. The size was perfect. Do you know what I mean? Like I actually felt like it was a huge bed. And then somehow 6 months ago, I was like, did I like gain weight or something? Like this bed is like way too small. Did I grow? Yes, but just on
Maybe.
a soul
Yeah.
level.
Yeah, exactly.
So anyway, so I'm looking at my life and I was like, wow, it's so interesting that the life I had written was about Brooklyn, not about Tel Aviv, but it looks so similar. I had this image in my head this morning of I would love for my life to look like this, X, Y, and Z. And I was like, yeah, that'll probably be like a year or 2 years from now. And then I was like, why?
Yeah.
Like, why do you think that it needs to start a year or 2 years? Like, what do you think needs to happen in order for, and yes, there are certain things that need to be in place, but like, why do you think it's going to take a year to 2 years to do that? Couldn't you just do that in a week? The
Do it.
future is today. Why not? And then in doing that, make it a game. I really love this idea, this image of like gamifying life. Like what happens? I just think of that episode of Community where they're playing the video game and Abed goes and he like he meets like this like he winds up like falling in love with her and like he meets her parents and then like they have children and then like they get married and he takes her off and they build this whole kingdom together and then they find Abed like I don't know 20 minutes later like what the hell like you
It's so funny. They were on a completely different journey. He was
Yes.
like, I'm going to stay here and see how this goes, which is also a fantastic metaphor for life. You guys keep
Wow.
going. I kind of want to explore this, whatever's going on over here, and see what happens with that. And then
really
they
interesting.
come back and they need exactly what he was working on this entire time.
That's a really good metaphor.
You know?
Also for me right now, that's a really good metaphor. Yeah. Yeah. And I think it was like, oh, you can't talk to her, or you can't, you know what I mean? Like, you can't interact. Like, come on, we've got a mission. Let's go. Like, well, what happens if I interact with her? And like, look at all this, and then they need him later because of that. So gamify life and start the future today.
I love it.
What's your yes for the week?
Yes. I think because this week is just really, really busy for me, I think I would just like to say yes to being very present. And I think I said this last week on the podcast of like being where my feet are. I think that's something that I really have to be mindful of this week. Yeah. But I'm already looking forward to like, maybe I can add a little bit of the gamify thing. I'm thinking I can do both because I'm getting like intrigued by that. You know what I mean? It tickled me a little bit. So I'm like, maybe I'll have that in the back of my head as well this week. Because I was like, oh, I can wait until next week to do that. No, I don't have to. I don't have to wait. I can just do that today and see what happens, you know?
You can multitask. You as a person.
Exactly.
Some people can't, but I know you can multitask, so you could do both things.
So that's what I'll do. And that's it for
Great.
today. I'll see you next week.
Goodbye.
Bye.
That concludes this week's episode of The Weekly Yes. You will find us on all major podcast platforms as well as YouTube, and you can follow us on Instagram as well at The Weekly Yes. Send us your yeses for the week or any story of when you've said yes and it really changed your life to theweeklyyes@gmail.com. And who knows, we might feature your story in an upcoming episode. Keep saying yes, and we'll see you next week.